some of the symptoms can be as simple as you're having customers have to contact you in the first place because they couldn't find their answer in the help center, because that answer is buried somewhere inside the organization, inside somebody's head, and it hasn't been documented on the help center. It can also be, first contact resolution. If you have multiple contacts from customers, because every time they call, they're not getting an answer because that agent isn't able to find the right knowledge because it's buried again somewhere else. Somebody else may have solved that problem, but they didn't document it, and so the other agents don't know it, and so the customer has to keep calling back till they get that magical person that's able to solve their problem, right? Another really common one is the agent onboarding time. The time proficiency for an agent. I was working with one client. It took them about 4 months to get an agent, a new hire agent, up to speed to a level of proficiency where they could basically operate on their own, and a knowledge base. They didn't really have a knowledge base. And so they brought me in to have a knowledge base implemented that was able to really reduce that time to proficiency, to basically 4.
Welcome to the Contact Center Gurus, the podcast for contact center and customer experience leaders. Learn best practices, new technology, tips and tricks, and more. Listen in.
Hello, everyone. This is Darren Prine with Cloud Tech Gurus, and welcome to our podcast. I'm excited today to be interviewing Martin Hobratschk. Did I pronounce that right? That's a tough one.
That's pretty good. Yeah, Hobratschk.
Hobratschk. All right. Martin is the CEO for Cognita Knowledge Management. He is also one of our gurus. If you're unfamiliar with Cloud Tech Gurus, we have 90 plus expert consultants that we work with, and Martin's one of them. And Martin has a very unique core competency, which is knowledge management. I can't think of anyone I know who knows more about knowledge management than Martin. And so today we're going to dig into the landscape of knowledge management, and hopefully everyone watching and listening to this will pick up some pointers and learn something new. So Martin, good to have you on. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Let's start off. Tell me a little bit about Cognita Knowledge Management.
Sure. So Cognita is my independent knowledge management consulting firm that I established last summer, about a year ago. After I got laid off from my last job, I decided it was time to go independent and do my own thing. And it's been really just an awesome journey so far.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. What kind of clients do you work with, and what do you typically help them with?
So my main client typically is somebody within the contact center, customer service, CX industry. I help companies who have a knowledge base or want to have some sort of knowledge management system to help their agents and to help their customers solve problems. It can be something that they already have and they just want to optimize it and make it work better to improve the KPIs that we're all familiar with, like FCR and AHT. It also helps a lot with knowledge retention and, of course, customer and agent retention. But sometimes companies are looking to make a big change and they want to get a new knowledge management system in. So I can help them assess their current tech stack and see where the gaps are and find that right solution for them.
Yeah, and there's still companies out there that their knowledge, well, they don't really have a knowledge management system. They have a knowledge base where it's just in SharePoint or some other type of solution like that, where it's not super usable, searchable. Maybe real quick, what's the difference between a knowledge base and a KMS?
Yeah, so a knowledge base is just that repository where the documents live. That is something that most companies have in some form. Many companies, as you said, might just have it in SharePoint or in Google Docs, or maybe they've got something like Confluence that they've got everything collected in. And that knowledge base is okay, but a lot of times it becomes what I call a digital landfill, where it's just a collection of docs that nobody's really managing. So the idea is to instead have a knowledge management system, which contains all of those same documents, those same articles, but it provides a lot of capability around making the content more findable and more engaging, and being able to analyze, who's viewing what's working for people in terms of solutions, what's not working, what's missing. And I think it's really just so important for companies to be really thoughtful about, how they're managing this knowledge. For many companies, knowledge management is kind of an afterthought. They don't really put a priority on knowledge management. It's a task that if they're even aware of the concept, maybe it's handed to somebody in the IT team, or maybe if we're lucky, it's on the training or learning and development team that kind of has a more thoughtful approach to it. IT team is just like, it's the system, and it's all in there. The L&D team at least can see how that content needs to be used and be updated. But a lot of times, there's not even that. It's just like, again, it's just that collection of documentation. And maybe when they think about a knowledge base, they're thinking about their help center that they have for customers, right? And all that content is collected in different silos and it's just not managed very well. So again, looking at a unified knowledge management system can help these companies solve so many problems around knowledge management and make it much easier for them to manage that knowledge effectively.
Yeah. And in addition, it's kind of the most critical part of self-service working for a company is
Yeah.
having a great knowledge management system. And
Yeah.
what are some of the symptoms? So like if we look at companies that we all do business with personally, what are some of the symptoms we see of companies that don't have a great knowledge management system?
Yeah. Some of the symptoms can be as simple as you're having customers have to contact you in the first place because they couldn't find their answer in the help center, because that answer is buried somewhere inside the organization, inside somebody's head, and it hasn't been documented on the help center.
Mhm.
It can also be, first contact resolution. If you have multiple contacts from customers, because every time they call, they're not getting an answer because that agent isn't able to find the right knowledge because it's buried again somewhere else. Somebody else may have solved that problem, but they didn't document it. And so the other agents don't know it. And so the customer has to keep calling back till they get that magical person that's able to solve their problem, right? Uh, Another really common one is the agent onboarding time, the time proficiency for an agent. I was working with one client. It took them about 4 months to get an agent, a new hire agent, up to speed to a level of proficiency where they could basically operate on their own, and a knowledge base. They didn't really have a knowledge base. And so they brought me in to have a knowledge base implemented that was able to really reduce that time to proficiency, to basically 4 weeks. They still need a little bit of help after that, but it just dramatically sped up the time that it took to get that agent up to speed. And, that agent proficiency, really it's a matter of productivity, right? You want these agents to be productive as fast as possible, and the more productive they are, the more contacts they can handle, and the more cost effective it is.
Yeah. And I imagine ever since COVID, when everyone went remote, and still a lot of contact centers have remained remote and haven't pulled everybody
Yeah.
back into an on-prem center, that I imagine it plays a big role in how successful a remote agent can be. I have a little brother who works for a BPO, and I remember when he first started, he told me he felt like he was on an island with no one to help him, and he's on with
Mhm.
customers, handling calls from big name retailers that everyone would know, and
Yeah.
struggling to come up with the answers to give customers, and just didn't have tools or the right system to be able to get in there and help him find the answers. Very frustrated. I could see how that leads to attrition, but I
Yeah.
imagine the pandemic, you've probably seen a huge bump in the number of companies that have realized how important it is to have a great knowledge management system in place.
Yeah, I think that's really key is when when you're kind of remote and disconnected, it's not as easy just to turn to your cube mate and say, "Hey, I've got this problem, can you help me out?" Right? And you have things like, Slack and the internal messaging, that you can use, but that can take a while. Somebody has to be looking at it and has to be willing to respond to you to give you that answer, right? So having that good knowledge management system in place where you can go and find that answer very quickly, yeah, is so key to being able to really feel confident in your job when you're remote like that. But even, for, companies that have those on-premises contact centers, if it's a global company and they have multiple contact centers, it can still be a little bit difficult for that information to get shared between those contact centers if it's all kind of just kept within each contact center. It's something we've called, in my experience, tribal knowledge. You'll have a contact center and they have this tribal knowledge, and they'll kind of maybe have solutions for kind of sharing that amongst themselves, but it doesn't get shared across to another contact center. I ran into this when I was working for Nest several years ago. We had a BPO that was had collected their own documents about how to solve problems, and they had their own sort of mini knowledge base that they were using to resolve issues, and they were very good at resolving those issues. But the other contact centers didn't have that access, right? They didn't have that same collection, so we kind of had to work with them to say, hey, let's get all this in the knowledge base. We'd love that you're coming up with these new solutions. Let's feed that into our centralized knowledge base, that single point of truth.
Absolutely. And of course, with the for companies using a BPO and there's so many companies that have an internal center, but also have one, two, three, four, five BPOs as well. And
Mhm.
get those BPOs to perform as well as your agents that work in your internal center, and knowledge management is a big piece of that, isn't it?
That's a huge piece of that, right? Because you think about it, you have a BPO and you have that contract, and you decide, oh, you know what, we're going to move to another BPO because they're going to offer us better pricing. Well, how are you going to train all those agents? You can spend a lot of time and effort in putting them through, training classes and hope that they are able to ingest that fire hose of information. Or you can have a good knowledge base and say, okay, we're going to train you on how to use the knowledge base. And now you can go and find those answers and be able to really make that transition between those two BPOs, much more seamless.
Absolutely. I've always considered knowledge management systems to be just an essential. It's one of those things you have to have. How
Yeah.
can you have a great contact center? How can you provide excellent customer experience to all of your customers without a great knowledge management system? What's kind of the landscape of knowledge management now, and really how has it changed over the years, and what do you see it evolving into in the future?
Yeah, that's a really great question. In the past, when you have knowledge management systems or a knowledge base, a lot of times you'd have, maybe somebody who's a knowledge manager. You'd have a lot of tech writers, and those tech writers would work with SMEs to document, new solutions or document product information or document troubleshooting steps. And, so they kind of write the initial article, give it to the SME to review, and the SME who's busy with other things and doesn't see the importance in it, doesn't respond very quickly. And so it takes weeks to get something published, right? And by the time you get it published, maybe it's changed or there's an update, right? And you have to go back and start it all over again.
Yeah.
Uh, with these kind of more modern knowledge management systems and the AI assistance that comes with these systems, it really shortens the time to getting that content created. And you don't have to necessarily be a skilled tech writer to write a really good article. You can have a knowledge management system that has as a part of its functionality a little widget that says, okay, just put your case notes in here and turn that into a knowledge article. And then that gets reviewed by somebody who's an expert, but you don't have this back and forth of like, okay, let's get the SME. That SME is just able to put their thoughts down and then it formats it and it's ready to go, right? And so
And
that you're
become
really,
the tribal knowledge
yeah,
across all.
exactly. You're able to extract that tacit knowledge, collect that tribal knowledge. You're able to even mine case data for new solutions, right? So that you have an AI bot that's kind of looking through all the different, you know, comments and case notes and finding these new bits of information saying, hey, here's some new knowledge that we need to share with everybody, right? So it just makes that knowledge discovery so much more efficient, right? That it really just makes those knowledge management systems even more powerful within that contact center.
Yeah. And I imagine that all the different companies that provide QA tools, so conversational analytics with QA automation, that those interact with knowledge management systems so
Mhm.
that information in the KMS is constantly evolving and is
Yep.
constantly up to date. So,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, and you can tie all these systems together. A lot of these systems, and part of their selling point is, hey, they integrate with so many different, types of systems, right? And that's really key, is making sure that KMS can communicate with the QA system if needed. Very clearly, if that knowledge management system needs to be able to communicate with any AI chatbots and that sort of stuff, right? For the chatbots, these kind of new LLM based chatbots, what we're learning is that the knowledge base is crucial, right? In AI, a lot of times we talk about it in terms of data governance, being so crucial. I tend to think that knowledge management or knowledge governance is maybe even more crucial. Knowledge and data are two similar but separate things. Data is like the ingredients, it's the facts and the figures and that sort of thing. Knowledge is more like the recipe. It's all how you put it all together to kind of serve that up as that final dish, right? And so that making sure that knowledge is got the right information in it and is understandable and is up to date and is comprehensive is really crucial, right? And so you can use AI tools to help you with that, but without that knowledge governance, then you're going to have AI systems that just don't work. And we're seeing that in the real world. You see these companies that stand up these chatbots, and it can maybe solve the really simple problems,
mhm.
but once it gets a little bit more complex, it can't, or maybe even can't solve the simple problems. There was a kind of a infamous sort of case fairly recently. I can't remember the company where their chatbot was basically providing a wrong answer to people and these were software developers, and they're like, okay, well, if you can't even provide me with the right answer, why am I even using your software, right? And so it it can really cause some, like, customer churn if you're not giving them the right kind of support. And so it's really why it's really crucial to really be thoughtful about your knowledge management system and the knowledge governance and kind of the rules of the road that go around that.
Mhm. So I was concerned early on. So when AI agent assist solutions came on the market, where they're real time guiding agents through interactions, I thought, well,
Hmm.
is this going to replace KMS solutions or is this going to complement it? Ultimately, at this point, I found it complements it.
Yeah.
So if you're using, whether it be AI agent assist or AI even for automating interactions, a great KMS is going to help you implement that AI faster. It's going to help it work better. And it's going to work better for agents. It's going to work better for the AI. Is that
Yep.
more or less what you've seen?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's an assist. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for folks. It's just a tool that can make them more efficient. So maybe you might not need as many agents, but you're still going to need those human agents, right? There, and that tool is there to help them really be effective. And that those humans have to be in the loop to really be able to look at those answers and say, yeah, this is right, or this is wrong, and let's kind of make sure we can fix it. The AI can't create a content for AI, right? It doesn't have the context, it doesn't have the wisdom, that a human does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't see it as a threat to people's jobs. It's just another tool to be used to make your job even more effective.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting because I look at, we distribute for, I don't know, 15, 20 AI providers, and I look at what some of their capabilities are. And I'll use one as an example. I'm not going to mention their name, but essentially, the AI is going to join the all the employees. It's not just for a call center, actually. So it would be in this meeting with you and I. It would be in all my meetings. It's involved with my emails. It's involved with everything I do and my phone calls. And as a result, it's feeding into our knowledge management system so that
Mhm.
it's constantly evolving. But then you take the power of that and how a great knowledge management solution with AI becomes a virtual assistant for everybody from the CEO down. Now you're talking
Mhm.
about the CEO can say, all right, well, my product team met last week and I couldn't join them in the meeting. And it can then interrogate that knowledge management system and what happened in that meeting, what was discussed, what were the failures, what were the successes, what's going to be discussed in next week's meetings. And now they're on top of everything going on in every department in a way
Mhm.
never been able to before. And it's pretty exciting times seeing this happen.
Yeah, no, it's really crucial. I tend to think of AI as kind of the ultimate knowledge management system, because of what you're talking about. We've been talking about knowledge management in the context of the customer service contact center, right? But knowledge management has applications in all parts of an organization, right? It has application for the product team. It has applications for the executive team. There are very
Our,
cool. What's that?
the
Yeah.
HR team. Yeah.
HR team, 100%, right? And it's there are some really cool tools that will just kind of sit there, like you said, and just kind of listen in and be able to kind of document, okay, here's some new knowledge, here's who the experts are, right? Think about when you work for a very large corporation and you're in one part of the corporation, you're kind of trying to solve a problem and you need to find that expert and ask them some questions. You know, in the past that'd be kind of hard. You had to ask them people around you, do you know who can help me with this, blah blah blah. Well, now they've got tools that you can go in and just kind of say, hey, I need an expert on this, and it says, okay, here's who you need to talk to, and here's what they've been talking about lately, and here's a recent report that they did, right? And it just makes it so much easier to stay on top of things, like you said.
Brilliant. Now, I've always thought of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but knowledge management systems as one of those unique types of solutions. Workforce management would be another one where the ROI is stellar. It just makes sense. It pays
Hmm.
itself many times over.
Yep.
Uh, the things that come to mind for me would be you're going to reduce the time it takes to train a new agent, and labor's the most expensive thing in a company, so shortening training times there's one. Reducing attrition. If agents
Mhm.
feel like they're doing well in their interactions, they're able to get the knowledge they need to resolve customer issues quickly. They feel better about their own performance, more likely to stay on board with the company longer. What are some others? Because I know there's about 4 or 5 points I used to be able to cite where knowledge management, essentially, these are all the points that you could see how it's going to pay for itself.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned earlier, it helps with, those customer interactions as well, right? With a good knowledge management system, you know, being able to surface that knowledge to agents in a timely manner means that they're going to be able to resolve that contact the first time. So the customer's not calling back, or so they're not having to escalate up to a tier two or a tier three team, right? There's a lot of cost there. So you can reduce escalations and reduce first contact.
And
It makes them
shorten duration time
it's
of
shortened
an
the rate too. So your average handle time, your HT is going to go down, right? Because they're able to find that answer. They're not having to dig around and look in different systems. And this is you know, on a side note, why it's so important that that knowledge management system is surfaced in the agent's workflow. It's in the CRM. It's just right there on the same screen. They're not having to swivel chair and go to another window and search for something. And now you have AI assistants that kind of sit there and can listen to the call and start suggesting that content. And all of this helps with that first contact resolution, helps with AHT, and ultimately helps with customer satisfaction, right? Because your customer is able to get that answer easier, even if they're not using the self-help to solve their own problem. If they're having to talk to somebody or chat with somebody and they're getting that resolution really quick, and it's the right resolution the first time, they're going to be happier and they're going to give you those great CSAT scores and they're going to stick with you as a company instead of going and finding somebody else that helps them in a better way than you can.
Mhm. Let's talk about for companies right now that so they've listened to us so far. They're convinced they need a new knowledge management system. Maybe they don't have one now, or they've realized the one that they have is antiquated and it's just not doing the job across all the channels and social and however it needs to be working. But how does the company go about finding the right knowledge management system for their business now? And like, what are the components? What should it provide? What should companies look for in a knowledge management system?
Yeah, well, the first step is, it's kind of project management 101. You need to assess, where you're at. Do a real thorough assessment. Get that digital DNA alignment, as I like to call it. Understand what your ecosystem currently is. What does it look like? What's working for you? What's not working for you? Understand, you know, how that works with the people who are using it. Are people using it in the first place? Or if they are using it, what are the struggles that they're having with it? And then kind of take all that information, kind of put your plan together. Okay, what's working for us, what's not working for us, and what do we want to achieve with the new knowledge management system? And then once you have that evaluation, then you can take that, you've got your requirements basically, and then you can say, okay, here's the right solution. Maybe, we want to invest in a purpose-built knowledge management system for our contact center.
Mhm.
Or maybe we don't want to make that investment, but we want to make a different investment in integrations that we can use with our current knowledge management system to make it even better.
Mhm.
Um, and then also taking a look at all the workflows and processes and content guidelines and all that stuff that go around it, kind of the, how it actually works and the people that are helping not only to, create the knowledge, but manage that knowledge and make sure that it's quality. You have to make sure you understand that component so that you can choose the right tool that allows them to do that in a very effective and low cost way. And so it really just it takes getting a really good understanding of what's your use case, what exactly do you want to accomplish with this,
Mhm.
and setting up some goals that are tied to your KPIs. By doing this, we want to improve our AHT, or we want to reduce uh, agent churn, or we want to improve, you know, um, time to proficiency, or whatever that might be. And having all that information can then help you really select what the best solution for you is.
Mhm. Awesome. And is there anything that you've created or that others have created where a company needs to make sure they're ready for? Is there like a checklist, or are there things that a company needs to go through to see if they're even ready to adopt a knowledge management system, or is everyone ready to adopt a knowledge management system?
I think everybody's ready in some form to adopt or optimize their knowledge management system. I recently published a book that talks a little bit about this. It's really designed. The book is called MVP KB, a practical guide for customer service knowledge management, and it's really written for somebody who's new to knowledge management. I like to tell people I wrote it to me when I first started doing knowledge management. Like, what are the things that I wish I knew? So it's kind of a very basic guidebook. I also have a MVP KB assessment and quick start toolkit that has some different resources in there that companies can use to help kind of plan what they want to do. And these are all available on my website at www.cognita-km.com. I think with those kinds of things, you can get an idea of what it is you need to do. What are the specific things you need to look at? It's, again, some of it might be kind of project management 101, but I think there's some very unique things to knowledge management projects that people need to understand. And like I said, I talk about all those in my book and the toolkit.
Awesome. And when we push out the podcast, we'll have in the notes the name of your book and where they can get it, and also your website so they can use these tools. And I imagine, in addition, if somebody needs a little help with sourcing the right knowledge management system, you're available.
I'm 100% available. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, hey, but this has been great. I haven't sat down with a knowledge management system expert to talk about the landscape in well, I can't remember how long. So this has been very informative, and I enjoyed our time together. Thank you kindly for spending some time with me.
Well, thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Take care. Bye.